Hello BookTube. For this Tag Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the birth year book tag. This tag was created by Criminali, and I'll leave a link to his original video in the show notes down below, as well as references he provides as well, of course with the questions. I'm pretty glad I was originally going to film this video this morning, but it turned into a disaster. And I'm kind of glad I had some time to think about the tag and also to be in a bit of a better headspace. All I can say is I hate tech. I really hate tech. Anyway, let's get started. Question number 1. Have you read any books published in the year you were born? Yes, I have. If so, what's your favorite and why? I really don't have a favorite. Not because they were all good, but because they're all crap. Using the Goodreads list that Criminali provides, it's a link to Goodreads, and the Goodreads provides a list of the 200 most popular books published in any given year. Take it with a grain of salt, because the book that I was going to put as my favorite of 1983, the year I was born, wasn't actually published in 1983. It would be the Dark Phoenix Saga. The issues were published in 1980, and the graphic novel was actually published in 84. So, anyway, of the books that I'm pretty sure came out in 1983, that were on the list, I've read The Anubis Gates by Tim Powers, which I didn't particularly care for. I don't know if I bailed or not. In Search of Our Mother's Garden by Alice Walker. I don't know if I read the entire essay collection or just that one specific essay. Berlin Game by Lynn Dighton. It's okay, but wasn't spectacular. Literary Theory and Introduction by Terry Eagleton. How do you think an introduction to literary theory is going to go? It's rather boring. Even in a time when I was rather into literary theory. The Sleeping Dragon by Joel Rosenberg. I'm pretty sure I bailed on that. Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I largely dipped into that for a project I was doing, for a paper I was writing that was focusing on the character of Morgan Le Fay. But from what I did dip into Mists of Avalon, I'd rather read the older medieval Arthurian romances. Although I do have the Mists of Avalon, and so I probably should eventually get to it, even though Marion Zimmer Bradley is rather toxic nowadays, I shall say. And Christine by Stephen King, which I have read, although the movie is infinitely better than the book. So, if I had to pick a favorite of between that lot, I mean, Literary Theory by Terry Eagleton. So, the third part of the question, the second part of the question is what other favorites do you have? And, well, yeah, I think I answered that. None. So the third part of the question is, if you haven't read any birth year books, which one do you pledge to read in the next 6 months? Now, so when I was thinking about doing this tag, I kind of got the idea to maybe select a few books that sound interesting from the popular 200 and what I could glean from Wikipedia, and select a few and read them eventually. I'm not going to make a pledge because, in my experience, making a pledge to do something and trying to follow through on it is the fastest way to Bell City, and let's not go there. Let's not go there. But there are a few books that I'm rather interested in reading from my birth year. First of all, there is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, which I've wanted to read for a while. I don't know why. And I've also heard good things about Winter's Tale by Mark Halperin. Heartburn by Nora Ephron sounds interesting. Cathedral by Raymond Carver the title sounds interesting. And I've heard that Raymond Carver is a fantastic short story writer. I'd also like to read Gorillas in the Mist by Dan Fossey, Shame by Salman Rushdie, The Piano Teacher by Elfriede Jelinek. I really would love to read more German literature. The Collector's Stories of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The Life and Loves of a She-Devil by Faye Bolden. Sounds really interesting. The Moons of Jupiter by Alice Munro. On the title alone. Although I've heard mixed things about Alice Munro, and Salvador by Joan Didion, which sounds interesting. I'd also really like to read Vampire Hunter D by Hideyuki Kikuchi. It's a manga at least from the 80s, and I haven't really read much in the way of manga published before the mid-90s. So I'd kind of like to read into that. But the two that I'm most likely to get to immediately, because I actually have them, besides Mist of Avalon, which would be a Bell Redemption, I guess, I don't know, is On a Pale Horse by Piers Anthony. This is about, I think, somebody who has to replace death because they killed him or something, or killed it or something. And The Golden Swan by Nancy Springer, which I love this cover. What's it about? Young Dare, changeling son to King Traven of Isle, is called by mysterious vision to share his destiny with a strange, wandering youth known as Frayne. But when the gentle wolf-human Dare finds his bond brother, the curse of a dark enchantment and the search for a lost love has claimed Frayne's injured heart. Now Dare must journey with him, for only together would they unveil the prophecy they and know the peace hidden with their web of fate. I did read the earlier book in this series. So I think it's like a quartet. What is it? The White Heart. I think I tried it and bailed on it, even though I still have it, so I could eventually do Bell Redemption. But yeah, so those are the two books that I have besides Mist of Avalon and Christine, and I think maybe Sleeping Dragon. I think I have it. I don't know. We'll get to it when we get to that part of my library tour that I have, so I can read those immediately or eventually. We shall see. I mean, I'm not making any pledges or anything. So let's move down, and I'm not going to be listing these in the show notes because it's an excessive number of books. Although since I've got them written down, I can probably just copy and paste. Anyway, so question number 2. Have you read any books published in the year you turned 18? I think there were quite a few. So I've read, or wait, let me go and read the sub-questions. If so, what's your favorite and why? I'm going to add the other 2 questions to this one too. So, my favorite is Fullmetal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. And while probably the first volumes didn't appear in the US until 2002, I'm pretty sure that's the case with Bleach. I'm counting it on the date it was my first publication in Japan, and they started a serialization in 2001. So my favorite is Fullmetal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. It's the story of the Ulrich brothers, 2 young alchemists who perform a forbidden ritual to bring back their dead mother. The ritual exacts a price, even in failure. Edward loses a leg. His brother Alphonse loses his entire body. To keep Alphonse's soul attached to their plane of reality, Edward sacrifices an arm to attach his brother's soul to a suit of armor. Edward then joins the state military as a state alchemist, and he and his brother go on a journey in search of the Philosopher's Stone, a alchemical artifact said to be able to bypass the law of equivalent exchange, so that the brothers can restore themselves without cost to themselves or others. As the brothers journey, they come across an old conspiracy that reaches to the very foundations of their state. It is a wonderful series. I love it. And I am slowly collecting the entire series. I've also read, and some of my other favorites, Bleach by Tite Kubo. This is another manga series that started publication in 2001. It's a story of a young man named Ichigo Kurosaki who can see ghosts. One day he encounters a young soul reaper named Rukia Kukichi, who is fighting a hollow, evil ghost. During the fight, Rukia is injured and has to give some of her powers to Ichigo, who then fights and defeats the hollow, and he essentially replaces her as the Soul Reaper or Shinigami who responsible for that part of Tokyo. And the adventure goes from there. I've read the first few volumes of Bleach and then some of the middle volumes of Bleach, but I haven't read the entire series, so that's why I'm not putting it in my favorites. Although the early volumes of Bleach are fantastic. I've also read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, which is quite good. Chasm City by Alistair Reynolds, which is quite good. The Bone Doll's Twin by Lynn Llewellyn, which is really good. I really ought to look into collecting that entire trilogy at some point. And I think I've read bits of The Curse of Shalian by Lois McMaster Bujold, which I did eventually buy, which I don't know why. So some books I would like to read. The Life of Pi by Jan Martel sounds interesting, and I did like the film adaptation. Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. It was one of the books I had thought about including for my America 20 project. Empire Falls by Richard Russo, which, much like Blue Angel, is a book that I have obsessed over for 20 years. I have never gotten to. Really need to. Also added it to America 20 largely for that purpose. Really need to get to it eventually. Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami. The Shell Collector by Anthony Doerr. At Swim to Boys by Jamie O'Neill, which is over there. And had I remembered I put this there, or put a Swim to Boys there, I would have pulled it out too. And then The Gas Cat by Takeshi Hiraide, which sounds incredibly fascinating. So let's move on to question number 3. Of the last 10 books you read, how many were published before you were born? None. Although, to caveat that, I did read 2 poetry anthologies, or a poetry anthology and collected works. And some of the poems in both were published before I was born. But since neither book was actually published before I was born, doesn't count. Now, had we gone to all of the books I've read so far in 2022, there would be 2. The Theogony by Hesiod and Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie, but we've well past them. I've pretty much, I think, gone 20 books now. So, I mean, of the books I've read, half of them have been manga, published in, like, the 2010s. So, although that said, and as a sub-question, what were they? Did you prefer them to the newer books? I mean, I quite like them, but preferences, I don't know. Okay. Question number 4. What's your favorite movie from your birth year and why? So, my favorite movie from 1983 is Octopussy, the James Bond film of that year. Well, the official Bond film of 1983. It's basically James Bond is assigned to follow a jewelry smuggling operation that smuggles jewels and decorative objects of immense value from the Soviet Union through to New York and various auction houses. And as he does so, he comes upon a much more dangerous conspiracy. I love it, not necessarily for the plot, but for the song, All Time High by Rita Coolidge. I love that song. I also rather love the cinematography, the visuals of the film. It's really wonderfully shot. And some of the characters I quite like, although General Orlov, Stephen Burkhoff definitely had a blast. But I really much prefer Louis Jourdan's Kamal Khan. And of course, Maud Adams' Octopussy book. So yeah, also quite like, well, I shouldn't say quite like, I like a few scenes from Never Say Never Again, mainly the Spectre meeting. And there are a few other scenes, but I mean, Never Say Never Again is basically a lesser remake of Thunderball. I also quite liked Christine, The Hunger, Krull, and let's see, who else did I put down here? Oh, Fire and Ice. It's been forever since I've seen that. Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is in quite a while, and Danton, which is really good. And then the final question is, what's your favorite movie from the year you turned 18 and why? And that would be 2001, in case I forgot to mention it. I guess in order to keep my fantasy street cred, I've got to say Fellowship of the Ring. The first part of the Lord of the Rings trilogy that Peter Jackson produced in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it's a magnificent film. I mean, the visual, it's a wonderfully shot. The character, it's really good. And it also cuts some of the more annoying parts of the books. Other films, well, I don't know why I put Amélie, or Amélie. It's a French film about a young woman who I think falls in love. I mean, I'm still a bit traumatized by that film. One day I might tell the story about that. Also, Y Tu Mama Tambien, quite liked. The Memory Returns, I really liked. Gosford Park's amazing. 13 Ghosts. I have seen that Long Came a Spider, but can't say much about it. I don't know if I watched all of Bully or bailed on it. Ghost of Mars is pretty good. The Cowboy Bebop movie, I think it's Knocking on Heaven's Door. I've seen, but I mean, the series itself is much better. And Dagon, which I quite like. So that concludes the birth year book tag. If you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged, and I will see you tomorrow with part 17 of my 2022 library tour, where I will be continuing on with history. So until then, BookTube, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.